You've been very vocal in your support of Donald Trump lately, yet anyone with access to Google knows you were highly critical of him during his early presidency. Some might say you're a political weather vane, shifting with whichever way the wind of opportunity blows. Would you like to clarify that for us? Ethan's words sliced through the low hum of reporters typing notes, his mocking tone thick enough to turn heads in his direction. The room stilled. JD Vance fixed his calm, piercing gaze on Ethan, the weight of the question hanging heavily between them. JD stood silently for a moment, letting the tension stretch, his expression one of quiet contemplation. Then he spoke. "That's a fair question, Ethan. But before I respond, I'd like to ask you something in return. Do you think it's wrong to change one's mind when presented with new evidence or evolving circumstances?" Ethan leaned back slightly, his smirk unwavering. "Of course not, Mr. Vance. That's not really the issue here, though, is it? Some might say your particular shift seems less like a genuine change of heart and more like an opportunistic play to align yourself with the wind that's blowing strongest." JD raised an eyebrow, a faint hint of amusement momentarily flashing across his face. "Interesting perspective. But before I explain my position, I think it's only fair to point out the irony in your statement, Ethan." The murmurs from other reporters stopped abruptly. All eyes were now locked on JD. "You see," JD began, his voice carrying a calm yet undeniable weight, "I seem to recall a time not too long ago when you yourself had quite a bit of praise for Donald Trump. Am I remembering that wrong? Or did you publicly commend his policies on trade and even give him credit for his impact on unemployment rates?" The smirk on Ethan's face faltered for the first time. His brows tightened and he started to interrupt, but JD didn't skip a beat. "And do you remember when you gave glowing commentary on his Middle East peace negotiations? Or when you remarked, not once but repeatedly, that his economic policies had benefited working-class Americans? Would it be fair, Ethan, if I stood here today and accused you of flipping your position just for clicks, views, or ratings?" The color rose slightly in Ethan's face. His mouth opened and closed as though searching for a response. JD, however, pressed on, his tone even but pointed. "You see, it's easy to judge someone else's motives. Easy to call someone a weather vane, a flip-flopper, or whatever convenient metaphor fits your headline that day. But if I turn the lens back on you, wouldn't you say your shift in tone about Trump could also appear calculated?" The tension in the room thickened. Ethan tried to recover, his voice tinged with defensive surprise. "My job is to analyze and report. Any praise I gave in the past was based on specific actions, and my criticisms now reflect the failures I've observed since then. That's not the same as what we're discussing here." JD nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Ah, a nuanced position. How convenient. It sounds almost as if you're acknowledging that perspectives can shift based on circumstances, doesn't it?" The rhetorical question landed like a hammer, but JD wasn't done. "But here's the difference, Ethan. I'm standing here not hiding from my past words, but speaking to how my views have evolved over time. I'm telling you that my initial criticism of Trump was genuine, rooted in what I believed at the time. And I'm also telling you that when I saw something good, when I saw him standing up for workers and challenging the status quo, I had the humility to admit I was wrong." Ethan's posture stiffened, his face an uneven mix of frustration and discomfort. The rest of the room watched the exchange like spectators at a particularly intense match, where both players are impressive in their agility, but only one truly commands the court. JD continued, now addressing the entire room. "This isn't just about me or Trump or even you, Ethan. It's about the broader issue of how we engage as a society. We're so quick to villainize one another, to call out flaws, to ridicule anyone who dares to change their mind. But isn't growth the goal? Isn't reevaluating your stance in light of new facts what we want from leaders? Or anyone, for that matter?" His voice softened slightly, but the intensity in his words remained. "I've had to answer for my shifts. I'm answering for them again right now, in front of all of you. But who holds anyone else accountable for their own evolutions, and yes, their own contradictions? If you accuse me of opportunism, fine. But by that same measure, what does it say about a journalist or commentator who shifts their tone just as aggressively, but expects the luxury of never having their motives questioned? The room was silent. Ethan's earlier bravado had dissolved into something far more subdued. JD leaned slightly forward, anchoring the moment.